Thanks for tuning in to Dead Letter Omissions. Appreciate it, where we talk about everything underground, hardcore, and horror. I'm Steve, and we got Jeremy here. You want to wave?
How's it going, guys?
Maggie, Markisan, who was actually the guest last week, and he's here to join us with the legendary Sanford Parker, who's currently residing in Chicago. How you doing, Sanford?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Very cool. Yeah, actually, what have you been doing lately? I just got the I Hate God album in the mail. Saw you.
Oh, right on.
You engineered it. Sounds great. Where did you guys record that?
I only ended up doing the vocals. They recorded the music like 2 years prior, I think, and then they just kind of went on tour and just kept touring. So it was kind of a funny story. Mike actually posted on Instagram or something that the record was like all recorded. They just needed to track the vocals, and somebody actually tagged me in the fucking post, and I saw it, and I'm like, so I texted Mike. I'm like, hey, you need to finish these vocals, and he's like, yeah. I'm like, well, if you want to come to Chicago, man, and this was like in August, so obviously it was like fucking right in the middle of the pandemic shit. I'm like, it's just me in the studio, like, it's totally cool, like, it's not a situation that you're gonna need to be freaked out about. So anyway, he looked into it, and he was able to get a flight round trip for $40.
Oh my god! During that time.
Yeah, totally. And he got an Airbnb like a few blocks from the studio. Nice. So it worked out great. So he would come to the studio, we would track all day, and then he would go back to the Airbnb and chill out, and we would just do it again the next day. So he was in town for like, I want to say 6 or 7 days, something like that. So we did all the vocals, and then he flew back, and then I sent the tracks back to New Orleans where they mixed it.
Gotcha. Well, you guys have experience through Corrections House, right? Snake.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Are you guys still doing that, or?
Yeah, I worked with Mike. I worked with Mike on all the Corrections House stuff, obviously, and then I mixed the prior I Hate God record, the self-titled one.
Gotcha. Because you're from Southern Alabama?
Originally, yeah, I was born, but I was born there, but I mostly grew up in Florida. Yeah.
Got it.
See, this is why it pisses me off. I lost my notebook. I had all this stuff.
Well, Markisan has a lot of questions. So.
Yeah, well, since we're talking about that, you moved to Chicago in the late 90s, and I lived in Chicago for 20 years. I just moved to Hawaii last year. So
I've definitely seen you around.
Have you? Yeah, because I would go to shows every week, all the time.
Yeah.
So what prompted that move to that city, and what did you do for work when you first got there?
Well, I went to school in the late 90s for music production, and I didn't want to stay in Florida because it's fucking Florida. I just wanted to leave. So my original my original plan was to move to the Bay Area, but it was so fucking expensive even back then that was kind of out of the question. And then a guy in my class was from Chicago, and he's like, fucking move to Chicago, man. It's like not any more expensive than living in Florida. So I'm like, fuck it. So I literally threw my shit in a U-Haul and moved to Chicago. Never stepped foot in Chicago before that. Mm-hmm. And it kind of worked out. It was weird coincidence that I interned at the school after I graduated, and one of the instructors I had got a call from a studio owner in Chicago called Studio Chicago, and he was like, "Hey, do you have any guys heading my way? I need a new assistant engineer." And she was like, "As a matter of fact, I have a guy that's looking into it." And he was like, "Well, have him call me." So I called him, and he was like, "Yeah, man, when you get here, you've got a gig." So it was weird. Like everything just kind of worked out.
Mm-hmm. What was it like for you when you first moved?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, I read that you like country music. So, like, what was the connection between you liking country music and then pretty much, engineering mostly all metal?
Well, I mean, I grew up listening to country music. Like,
Right.
that's all my family listens to.
Yeah.
I'm from like the same area as Hank Williams. Like my grandmother is from the same town as him, and my uncle and Hank Williams Jr. are like old hunting buddies, and so like I don't know. It's always been, I just grew up listening to it, so it's in my blood. But but I also got like into punk rock and metal when I was a kid. So I mean, I don't know. I like tons of shit. So it just kind of worked out like that.
Right on.
Mm-hmm. Eclectic taste. So when you moved to Chicago, what was it like? Was it a culture shock for you moving from Florida and being from Alabama? How was it different?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's definitely a much different landscape. In Florida, it's just like big open fucking strip malls everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
That was like the weirdest part, was being in a city where everything's like congested and like, which is great. I loved it. But I was also like fucking 21. I had 22 when I moved here, so I was just like, I didn't give a fuck. I just wanted to like go to shows and make music, and you know what I mean? So it was like the perfect scene for that. And like the music scene was really popping off at that point. And I don't know, it was just like a nice like little hotbed for shit going down.
That's crazy because I was around the same age as you, and I moved from Syracuse, New York to Chicago right around the same time. But there wasn't really much of a metal scene then. I remember going there.
No, there wasn't.
Like indie rock. There was hardcore, and being from Syracuse, New York, I was really into hardcore. There was punk. So what was it like for you to be a part of that formation of the metal scene in Chicago?
Well, I mean, I'm like a huge hardcore fan too, so that was perfect for me. I would go to Fireside like every fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I was at Fireside. And I didn't even know who the fuck was playing. I would just show up and start watching shows. And so yeah, that was great. Yeah, you're right. The metal scene wasn't really all that great at the time, but the hardcore scene was really, really kick-ass. And then I felt like the metal scene really started to kind of come around, a few years later, like early 2000s. There was a lot of killer bands coming out around that time.
Yeah, that's interesting because you could go to the Fireside and see two shows, matinee and a late show, and it'd be totally different. It'll, like
oh yeah,
Friday,
totally, man. I would
7,000 Dying Rats or Meali,
yeah,
all that stuff.
Yeah, I would have a day off, and I would just go to Fireside at like 1 or 2 in the afternoon, and I would just hang out all fucking day. And if it was a band I didn't like, I would just go to the bar and drink, and then come back out for the bands that I wanted to see. And yeah, that was like the way I spent pretty much every day off I had. I would do that.
So during the Fireside days, were you in any bands playing, or what was the first band you joined when you came out here?
The first band I had, I guess technically, was this noise band. It's kind of like harsh industrial, like weird fucking thing that me and a buddy of mine did, called Decomposing Baby. And it was just like brutal, like harsh electronics. So we would play Fireside all the time, and like DIY shows and stuff. And then I started playing in a band called Behold the Living Corpse. And it was kind of more, it was like all the songs were kind of based around like horror films and stuff. And it was kind of more thrashy, So that band played Fireside a ton. So that was like, between those two things, I played the Fireside a lot, and then I started Buried at Sea, and we played Fireside a ton of times. So
yeah, I've seen a couple of those bands. It's just hard to remember. I'm on the they have that Fireside flyer Facebook page, and you got like 1,000 bands. You're trying to figure out if you're on that flyer, just kind of going line for line. But
yeah, totally, man. I do that shit all the time.
And then I remember like every year was Shellac and Fugazi played. like either the
Right.
Congress or there's the roller skating
Right.
rink I played, and you got hooked up with Albini, right? I know you guys. What's the story behind? Because you use the same mixing board as him, right?
Well, yeah. So when I had my studio, I had the same console as he does, but I do a lot of work at his studio. Like his electrical is his studio, and that's kind of like my main tracking room in Chicago. I don't have like a full studio anymore. I haven't for like 10 years. I kind of prefer just going or bouncing around and traveling to work with bands. But I have like a mixing setup, and I actually have been in the process of building. That's what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. Well, actually the last year, building like a small overdub room. So the idea is I can go to electrical, record the drums, record the basics, and then go back to my studio and do all the guitar overdubs, do the vocals, percussion, synths, any of that shit, and then we can mix it. You know what I mean? Because I ran a full commercial studio for a long time, and it's a lot of fucking work, and I don't ever want to do that again.
Yeah, that was actually my next question. If you're still doing the full studio, I read I don't know when it was that you were like, man, this is hard fucking work. It's like too much. So
yeah,
still doing that full
well, especially at the time I was touring a lot too, you know, so it was super hard because, you know, the overhead is not cheap on a studio like that. So when you're on tour, it's like you're trying to rent it out to other engineers and other producers, and you know there's always shit coming up, stuff breaks, you know, things happen, and you're trying to deal with that shit while you're on the road, and it was just a fucking nightmare.
You're not around, you can't manage it.
Yeah, I'm glad those days are behind me now.
So I had a question about Twilight 3. That's such a interesting mix of people that are on that CD. How did how did Thurston Morgan involved with the black metal band, and like how was that? It had to be fun, I guess, in some level.
Yeah, that record. No, it was awesome. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. So the Thurston Moore thing happened because when I did On a Studio, my partner Jeremy Lemos was a sound guy for Sonic Youth, and so he was on the road like constantly, you know. And so when he wasn't on the road, he and I decided that we wanted to do a band together, and we were, you know, coming up with who, you know, we want to play drums, and he mentioned Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth. And I was like, yeah, that'd be fucking great. You know, so he hit up Steve, and Steve was like, yeah, totally, man, I'll do it. So he came out and he ended up playing on the record, and we got Chris Conley that used to be in Ministry. And we did one record for Relapse. It's called The High Confessions. And so we just hit it off, you know, like Steve's such a rad dude. So anyway, when we were doing the second Twilight record, everybody was in my studio, and we were like hanging out, and there was a copy of Decibel, and there was an interview with Thurston Moore in it. And he started listing like all these like black metal dudes that he likes. And he listed Jeff Whitehead, and I think he mentioned Neil. But anyway, it was just funny because I'm like, he's talking about you guys. And somebody like laughed, and we're like, well, maybe we should get him on the next record. And I'm like, well, you know, that's totally fucking doable. So I got his contact from my partner that did sound for him. And I just emailed him, and I'm like, hey, you know, would you be interested in this? And he's like, fuck yeah, absolutely. Definitely. So we actually like, you know, had been talking about it for a couple of years before it actually happened. So
just couldn't make the time.
So yeah, that's how that whole thing came up. What's that?
You couldn't make the time to do it. Why did it take so long?
Well, I mean, we just weren't ready. I mean, I like hit them up when we were doing the second record.
Oh, gotcha.
So, you know, and those knuckleheads take forever to do anything. So by the time we were ready to do the third record, you know, it had been like, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, however long it was.
Mhm.
So we just interviewed one of Jeremy's favorite bands. What is it? A couple weeks ago, a month ago. My timeline's messed up. But Junior Bruce.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and that's how I ended up learning more about you, because I was, digging into, who produced and, all of that. And I had always read that you were a Chicago thing, and those guys are from Florida. So I was like, man, it's a long distance. Like, what a connection,
Right.
And that was an
Well,
awesome interview, and those guys are great.
Well, that's kind of a funny story. Scott, that sings for Junior Bruce, used to be in a band called Bloodlet. And when I was going to school for recording in 96, 97, Bloodlet had just put out Seraphim Fall. And there was all these like samples. I don't know if you're familiar with the record, but there's like tons of like samples and like all this crazy. It's a cool fucking record. And but they didn't have anybody to play that shit live. So I don't even know how I met those dudes. I think just fucking partying or something. I ran into those guys or whatever. And so I mentioned, I had a sampler, and I was like, if you want, I could like fucking do all your samples for you. And they're like, yeah, that's great. And so we had one rehearsal, and then the band broke up. So that was it. That was like my time in Bloodlight was literally about 3 hours. So
the funniest. Oh, go ahead.
Years later, we ended up playing with. When I was in Minsk, I think we played with. Scott had another band called Hope and Suicide. I think it was that band. We played with them in like fucking Wilmington, North Carolina, some shit. And I was like, hey, Scott, remember me or whatever? And he's like, dude, what's up? So we kind of reconnected and just stayed in touch. And when we would play in Orlando, we would go crash at his house and shit like that. So anyway, like when he started doing Junior Bruce stuff, he hit me up to mix it. And so I did, and then I ended up mixing some recent Bloodlet stuff. Actually, they've been doing songs again. So they did a 7-inch like last year before, and I mixed those songs. So yeah, it's just kind of weird how it's just come like full circle, like 20 fucking years later.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, did you go to recording school at Columbia? Or
no, I went to a school in Orlando called Full Sail.
Oh, okay.
It's like it was like started as just a primary like recording school, but then they started adding like film and computer animation and shit like that. So I don't even know like how much of it's actually recording anymore, because there's really no fucking jobs for that. So I think they're probably mostly doing like film, and they probably do like I don't know, it's like probably computer animation and stuff, or video gaming, I think is another thing they do.
Gotcha.
Well, Sanford, you produce records, but you also do engineering and mixing. Sometimes you do all of those things. I was wondering if you could just explain what each of those jobs are and how they're different for people who might not know what those are.
Well, like the way it started out was the producer was kind of like the guy that would wrangle everyone and, find the studio and find the engineers and, decide who was going to mix it. And if the band needed musicians, he would hire the musicians. He would help the bands arrange and write the songs. And so like that was that's how the role of a producer really started. And the engineer was just the guy that literally, turn the knobs and move the faders and shit like that. He had absolutely no say on the creative side of things. But then over the years, those two roles have like merged, you know what I mean? So now it's like when somebody hires me to work on their record, I'll obviously engineer it, but I'll also like help them produce it if they want me to, and most bands are open to like my suggestions, and they're always, just my suggestions. Like it's not my record, you know what I mean? So if I hear something that I think could be better or, and just an idea I have, I'll suggest it, and then the band's like, no, that's fucking horrible, we're not gonna do that. I'm like, that's totally fucking cool too. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I kind of feel like the producer and the engineer role are pretty much one and the same. You know, there's still times where somebody will hire me just to produce, and we'll go to a studio that has an engineer, or, you know, sometimes a guy will, you know, come in as a producer, and then I'll just engineer it. But that rarely happens. Usually I just end up doing both things.
I think you're respected well enough to where if you make a suggestion, people in the scene are going to be like, yeah, he's probably right.
Well, I mean, it depends, and you know, and I definitely not feel like all my suggestions are fucking good. You know what I mean? And a lot of times I'll suggest something, and the band's like, "No, we should do this," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's 100 times better." You know what I mean? So, to me, the way I always kind of explain it is, you know, I'm usually the first person hearing these songs outside of the band, and you know, when you're working on something artistically, you get so into it that you kind of lose perspective sometimes. You know what I mean? Or maybe there's something that to me is obvious, but to you it just didn't occur to you. You know what I mean? So that's the way I always say is, like, you know, or present it like, you know, this is as the first time a person outside of your little world listening to it, these are the things that I think could be better or could be different.
Well, it's hard. People take criticism difficult.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, every that's the other thing too. You know, is like when you're working with bands, you're also trying to, you know, you're a psychologist, you're a babysitter, you're, you know what I mean, you're a drug dealer. You're like, you wear a lot of hats. So, and you got to like know you got to be able to read people really well and be able to figure that shit out pretty quick, because you know you don't have a lot of time to like really, you know, get everybody's personality sorted before you finish it.
Especially if it's a new band that you're working with, because I assume that if you know you're working with a band like Pelican that you've worked with many years, it's a lot easier than working with somebody that you're doing it for the first time.
Yes and no. You know, like sometimes people I've known for 20 years, they go through life changes, and you know, shit happens, and they're not necessarily the same person they were, you know, 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's always like, is you know, that's a big part of it, is just trying to read people. I feel like I've gotten pretty good by, you know, as far as reading people. Like when I meet people for the first time, I feel like I can read them pretty quickly now, because you just have to, you know, you get used to it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So do you have like a long waiting list now because you're sought after? You get to kind of pick and choose what projects you take on?
Yeah. I mean, it depends. Like I don't really get, like, most of the people that reach out to me are stuff that I'm generally interested in. You know, I don't get hit up by like a jazz band really, or, you know, of a pop group or hip hop. Like, no, I don't get any of those types of calls. So most of the stuff that comes across my plate is stuff that I'm already pretty interested in, you know. And it depends. Like sometimes I'm, you know, booked 3 or 4 or 5 months out. Sometimes, you know, I like right now it's kind of slow. Like summers are usually pretty slow. Every used to, people would tour, and so everybody would be on tour this time of year.
That's not happening.
You know, obviously things have changed. So last year was fucking crazy. Like I was slammed like all year long. Like not tracking obviously, but mixing. Like I mixed a ton of fucking records. There was at one point where I had 13 different records going on at once in like various stages.
Cool. And that makes sense.
So
everybody was at
it was insane.
And so they were writing and they were recording and they were, you know, but there's just no tours. So
exactly.
I mean, when you're stuck in your house,
that's exactly what was happening.
Yeah, you just do, you know, all that artistic stuff starts pouring out because you're stuck at home, but then you can't really do anything with it after, you know, it's
right. Well, I think everybody's just kind of like, everybody's like stockpiling, you know, whatever they can right now, and then release it whenever they can. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, you know, like if all of a sudden in a few months, like everybody releases a record at one time, or if they're going to kind of release them like in stages, or, you know. Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be nuts.
I'm sorry. I have to excuse myself for a second. All of a sudden, my eyes are watering, and
Oh,
I
that's
keep
cool.
like fighting back sneezes. I'm so sorry.
Not a problem.
I'm so sorry.
So Sanford, what are you looking forward to touring with first? I mean, what are you working on currently? Once this all kind of breezes over.
Well, Scott and I started another Mirrors for Psychic Warfare album. The last when Neurosis played here, I guess it was 2019 now. He stayed over for a few days and tracked all of his guitar. And so now we're just trying to figure out when we can get the vocals done. And then that'll pretty much be done. We just need to mix it.
How did he get hooked up with the Neurosis guys? Like, I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I first met Scott, the other guitar player for Buried at Sea, used to actually live in the Neurosis practice space in Oakland. He was like just living in their practice building. So him and Scott became really good friends. And so when Neurosis would come through, like in the late 90s, early 2000s, that's when I originally met Scott. We didn't, and it was very like, hey man, how's it going? Whatever. We didn't like really start doing stuff musically until the first Corrections House record. And that's when, we started kind of getting closer and working on stuff together.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that you got Mike Williams and Scott Kelly in a band with you. That's kind of a dream. If you look at the that sludge trifecta, it's really what those two and Buzz Oven, during that time.
Yeah. Well, that's the Corrections House thing is kind of a funny story too. So originally it was supposed to be Bruce Lamont and Scott Kelly doing a solo tour. They were going to do a solo set each, and then Scott and Mike did a collaboration thing at South by Southwest like earlier that year, and it went really well. Like Scott or Bruce would just like loop shit with his saxophone, and Mike would just do like spoken word over it. So then Bruce presented, the idea with how about getting Mike involved. So then it was going to be a Scott Kelly, Bruce Lamont, Mike Williams solo tour. And so Bruce was telling me this, and I'm like, well, I'm going to fucking get on this tour too. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll talk to Scott. So he calls Scott and he's like, what do you think about adding Sanford? He's like, fuck yeah, let's do it. So we go to our booking agent and we're like, this is what we want to do. We want to do 4 solo sets. And the booking agent was like, you guys are idiots. Why don't you just form a band? And we're like, oh yeah, totally. We could totally do that. So we were like, well, I guess we need a band name. So Mike had a list of names and we were all like, Corrections House, that's the one. So we booked a tour, like an entire fucking US tour for like 6 weeks. We had a tour booked and we didn't have one fucking note written. Like not a song, nothing. Wow. And so we're like, all right, I guess we should write some fucking songs. So we kind of like wrote some shit and sent it back and forth over the internet. And we had never even been in the same room together at all. And so the first show was in Brooklyn at St. Vitus. We flew in the day before. And no, Neurosis had a gig in Philly. That's what it was. Neurosis had a gig in Philly 2 days before. So we flew into New York, drove down, saw Neurosis in Philly. Then the next day, oh no, shit, I'm sorry. Neurosis played and then Corrections House playing the next night. So we went to Philly, drove back to New York that night, got up the next day, rehearsed for the first time ever, and then went and played a show that night, and then started a 6-week tour.
How did that go? Did you guys just pick a key or start with a drum beat?
Yeah, it all kind of started with a beat. Like it was like some beats I had that I sent to them, you know, and they're like, yeah, I could do this, you know, whatever. We like sent files back and forth and just kind of put the songs together. So then when we actually got in a room to rehearse, you know, it was like, okay, this is how the song kind of goes, and then we figured it out. But the first time we ran through the song, it was a fucking train wreck, obviously. And we all looked at each other and we're like, fuck, what the fuck do we just do? Because we had like merch, we had boxes of t-shirts, we had fucking we didn't have any records at the time. We had like, you know, all this merch and shit. And we're like, did we just fucking just totally like fuck ourselves over, you know? But we made it work and people loved it. And we did the whole tour in a fucking Scion car.
Nice.
The four of us with all of our gear. Yeah.
I still drive a Scion.
It was fucking brutal.
Ooh.
You have a Scion?
Yeah, I do. I drive
They
one
gave us
mailbox
one.
truck. They gave you one?
They gave us like back when Scion was doing shit, they fucking they gave us one to do that. That's the reason we ended up with it. They let us have it.
Yeah, they made a Slayer Scion. Did you see that?
What?
Oh,
Like
really?
it's all decked out with like all their logos in the seats. It's all red and black leather. Got some crazy speakers. It opens up so they can like have a little mini concert on the back of a Scion. That never happened.
Does it
There's no
shoot
way.
flames out the back or something?
Yeah, it has tribal tattoo on its head. Yeah, I saw some of that Bruce Lamont stuff on YouTube with the spoken word, and I'm like, you know, that dude has balls, like for real. Like it was obviously all improv, but he was super into it. I played a show with him with the Yakuza at one of those. You remember the Holiday of Horrors at the Metro with Macabre? They played like
Oh, yeah.
every year.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's cool to watch, man. Like he's a pretty animated metal saxophonist for sure.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing about that dude is he just gives no fucks. You know what I mean? Like he does not care what anybody thinks about him or like anything that he does, which is fucking great. Like I totally respect that. You know what I mean? Like he does his thing, and that's what he does. You know, and he doesn't give a fuck what anybody else thinks.
Yeah, you could totally see that.
Well, you talked about making music, and I wonder, is it hard for you to balance playing music with producing, recording music, to find the time for it, Sanford?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I you know, I definitely wish I had more time to dedicate toward writing my own shit. But you know, at the same time, I like being busy. So I don't know, you know, it's just trying to find a balance. Like I've been trying to work on a new solo record for a while, and every time I write a solo record, it ends up becoming a Corrections House or a Mirrors for Psychic Warfare record. So I think this time around, I've been doing the soundtrack for a horror film.
Oh,
and
cool.
I've been getting a lot of like really cool ideas by doing that, as far as like kind of what I want to do for the next solo thing.
Can you say what the horror film is?
What's that?
Can you say what the horror film is? Or is it like top secret shit?
I can't talk about it right now, unfortunately.
I knew it.
Yeah, I can't. I'm contractually bound not to say anything.
Yeah, I figured, but I thought you tried. I saw something that maybe you did I think it was maybe 7 years ago on YouTube, where it was in LA, and it was like a digital type thing, almost like a DJ. Or is there another Sanford Parker?
Was it like one of my solo sets, maybe?
It seems that way. Yeah. I forgot where. I lost my fucking notebook. But it was something you did like 7 years ago in LA, and it was like a DJ type situation. It was just you, and it was just really industrial.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of like my solo shit. Is like it's kind of a mix of like weird kind of down tempo, like kind of dubby, in like heavy blown out industrial shit. Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
I thought it
that's
was pretty good.
yeah, it's super fun doing that. I want to start doing more of it. I was doing it for a while. Like I did a few tours, and I've got the one record out. Like I said, I've been trying to get a new record out, but other bands keep hijacking it. But yeah, hopefully soon. That's my goal for the next, like actually this summer. Like since my schedule's slowing down a bit, I'm gonna try to like really focus on getting another record out.
That's awesome.
Is there going to be any new Minx material, or?
I mean, those guys are still going. You know, I haven't played with them in like 10 years, but they're still doing it. I think they're writing. Yeah, I know they're writing new material. I haven't heard anything yet, but I'm sure it's great.
Yeah, I haven't seen a new album for a while. I didn't know you were not in that band anymore. Sorry.
But you've
Marcus-
worked
No, it's
on
totally.
their-
I mean,
but you worked on producing and engineering their stuff, right? Since
yeah. I produced and mixed their last record, even though I didn't play on it. They have another bass player now.
right.
We're totally fucking cool. I mean, it's not it's not anything like that at all. Yeah, they actually recorded. Zach has another project where they covered a Deep Purple song, and Chris came up and tracked the keyboards, the organ shit with me, like a month or two ago. So I saw him then, and Chris has a new fucking project that's incredible. It's kind of like gothic new wave. Is fucking great. It's one of the coolest things I've heard in a long time. I don't know. I can't remember what it's called, but what's that?
Can you give us a link or something so we could hear it, or is that not something you?
I don't think it's out yet. They're still working on it.
Oh, right on.
They haven't finished it, but I'm sure like once it comes out, they'll promote it and all that shit. But it's fucking super good.
Yeah, there's a lot of that dark wave stuff that's coming out that's really cool. It's actually kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
Hear a little more, of that.
Yeah, totally.
Just kind of breaks it up. It's kind of like playing in metal bands over so many years and doing the podcast. It's a metal podcast, and Markisan's in a totally different podcast, Metalheads Podcast. It's like you're just listening to so much metal constantly, constant.
Oh, we get so many
metal.
promos. It's
Well, we
overwhelming.
don't get
Yeah.
we don't get shit, but the
Well, I was gonna go back
Yeah.
to the beginning a little bit, Sanford, because we were talking about when you moved to Chicago, and I was there, and that's like kind of the beginning of metal. So when I moved there, Pelican was like first starting up, and they became kind of like my hometown band, almost like a sports team, because they started when I got there. So you worked on the self-titled debut. You engineered that record. It put you on the map. It put them on the map. So I was wondering if you could take us back to that time period a little bit and talk about how you came to work on the record and how did it come together?
Well, before internet, if you wanted to join a band, you made a flyer and you hung it up in record stores and coffee shops with your fucking phone number on it. And that's exactly what I did. And I put a fucking flyer up in a coffee shop, and Laurent, the guitarist, the old guitarist, he's not in Pelican anymore, but he saw the ad and he called me. And so we went and met up, and we were just like, I went over to his house and we were just listening to records, and he started playing me some riffs that he had. And I'm like, this is fucking great, and he's like, yeah, I've got a band together. We're working on these tunes, but we don't have a vocalist and we don't know what to do. So I was like, well, I'm not really a vocalist, but I'm down to like give it a shot or whatever. And so they kind of like were still like working on the songs and kind of, getting an idea like what they wanted to do. So when we recorded the first EP, they came in to record the songs as more of a kind of a demo to like, for me to try some vocals. And I don't know, I think they had like maybe some some other ideas, you know, like that they wanted to do, like other people they wanted to try. But basically, it was more or less a demo for like auditioning vocalists. And I remember ISIS, I think it was playing Fireside, or maybe it was High on Fire, somebody like that. But anyway, my friend was like, you know, we need an opener. I'm like, oh, dude, you should check out this band. They're fucking great. They don't have a vocalist now, but maybe they'll play instrumental or whatever. So I called them. I'm like, do you guys want to play this? I think it was ISIS. Yeah, because that's when they got signed. And they're like, yeah, fuck it. We'll just play. And I think maybe Laurent like kind of sang on one song at the show, but it was pretty much mostly, if not all, they just played all their songs instrumental. You know, they were like the first out of like 5 bands or something. And people fucking flipped out. They loved it. They loved the fact that there was no vocals. And I'm pretty sure Aaron like signed them right then, if not shortly after he made them an offer for a Hydra Head. So like after that, they were kind of like, you know, fuck it, we don't need a vocalist. So we just went back and we mixed the EP, and that's what they ended up releasing.
That's awesome. It's almost been 20 years now, too.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been 99 or 2000.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I think it came out 2003, maybe.
We're old.
I was at that Fireside show. They're actually like some of those guys came from a band. You remember Tusk? I think they were called Tusk.
Yeah.
And before
Right.
that, they were called Bloody Tusk. And I remember seeing them in like some
Right.
crust punk basement in Chicago. I forgot. Like it just smelled like ass. Like it was just gross. Like shit on the floor. And then they turned into
Well,
Pelicans.
like 3 of the dudes, Larry, Trevor, and Laurent, they were in Bloody Tusk. And so they were like, that was like their main band. Like Pelican was like their little side project, you know what I mean? Like that was just something they were kind of experimenting with. And then obviously that kind of took off.
Right. What was it like for you to engineer that album? Because that was the one that really got you started, right?
I mean, we spent 2 days on it, I think, if that. I think they came in and tracked everything in 1 day, and then we mixed it the next. You know, I mean, like it was never like we didn't go in the studio like, oh man, we're gonna fucking record this album that's gonna like fucking launch us all into like, you know, it was just like, hey, we need to go in and record these fucking songs. So that's what we did, you know. And I think we went in and recorded everything live in 1 day and then mixed it the next, and that was kind of it.
That was it.
One and done.
Did you ever record any vocals for it? Because you said that you might have done some vocals. Did you actually record anything?
I might have like recorded some shit, like some 4-track stuff at home just to kind of fuck around with. I don't actually remember. I know like, cause I was also, I was again, like the one guy with the sampler, and, you know, we talked about maybe like using samples instead of vocals, you know? So I know I kind of fucked around with that a little bit, but it didn't really like, you know, I think we kind of knew like right away that it was not going to work. You know what I mean? Like that, like we knew that like keeping an instrumental was the best thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting. Chicago has like 2 of the best instrumental bands, you know, Russian Circles and Pelican. And Pelican,
Right.
I do like Russian Circles.
yeah, and I remember they were taking off pretty big. Pelican, they opened up at the old Bottom Lounge. I think it was Mastodon's like Leviathan tour.
That's deep.
And that was a pretty big show for them. But yeah, they really took off, and now I think they're kind of split up on opposite sides of the United States, and they're doing a lot of file sharing and whatnot. But yeah, that's a long time ago now. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, both the bands share a rehearsal space together too. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So
not only are they from the
Russian
same
Circles.
city-
I can't imagine the pedal collection they have.
Yeah, it's got to be insane.
A lot of delay pedals, man.
So there's some bands that you've worked with continuously, or you've worked on multiple projects with, then there's also bands that maybe you've just done like an album or two, and then they decide to work with somebody else. So my question is, does it piss you off when a band doesn't ask you to work on their next record?
Not at all. I actually, a lot of times I'll suggest bands work with somebody else, because
Really?
it's good to like, yeah, it's good to get different perspective. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's like, I don't always go to the same barber because I want to see what this other guy can do, and I feel like it's kind of the same way. Like, I don't take it personally at all.
Right.
I think it's good for bands to experiment with different guys and try out different things.
Is
So
there
there was just the new I Hate God album. Mike's voice sounds different on that album than his previous albums. He has this. It's always this real curly sound, and his new album he has a little bit different sound.
It's more straightforward punk. Like you could tell they toured with Negative Approach again. They kind of have that.
Yeah,
It's a little more.
his vocals are different.
It has more clarity.
It's more clear. Where before it was a little bit more curly and kind of rough,
Well, I mean, he's also sober now, so that, that might have something to do with it.
We actually discussed this earlier in the kitchen last night. We talked about that. I think it's cool to see growth. He always had this rough, curly sound that I love.
Well, that was the vibe we were going for, was more hardcore.
Yeah.
We wanted to like kind of push that more on this record and then make the vocals more up front, more in your face, than the previous record.
It was good, but it was different.
Yeah, but now they're a 3-piece too. I mean, it's just Bauer. I know he's using I think the other guy's set up on the other side of the stage with an AB, but yeah, it's I'm guessing it's going to be a lot more straightforward live than Take It or Need It for Pain when they were touring.
I still love it out of the way.
Yeah, I mean, people get older too.
Different. Well, yeah, we're all old.
we're all pretty old.
Fucking old now.
Hey, let me ask you about Knockmistium. Is that still a thing? Because it looks like they're playing at least in Europe now with Blake, and I know that was kind of he went through some shit, but are you going to be a part of that, or is there going to be any maybe another Twilight album that everyone's a part of, or?
I'll never do anything with Blake Judd ever again. So no, I will never be involved with Knockmistium. He's asked me a few times over the past few years to be involved in one thing or another, and I instantly shoot him down. I don't want anything to do with that. Like, that guy's he's just a shitty dude, and I don't want anything to do with that guy. As far as the Twilight record, possibly. I mean, it definitely wouldn't involve him. But I mean, Neil literally had a kid today. So I don't, people are everybody's got lives, everybody's got shit going on. So there's no talk of a Twilight record. I don't see a Twilight record in the future, but I mean, it's definitely not out of the possibility.
Do you think there'd ever be a chance for you to do something with a Leviathan album? Because I know, like, Scar cited he actually had somebody else, producing that album. Do you think you might?
He's been working with Billy Anderson a lot.
Yeah, it was great for sure.
I mean, I would totally work with Whitehead again. I mean, he's been working with Billy because they live like literally, a couple miles from each other, which makes sense. Like, it's easy, and Billy's great. He's an awesome dude, and he's obviously done a lot of amazing records. So yeah, I mean, I think Jeff's just like, it's easy for him, to work with Billy out there. But if the opportunity came around, fuck yeah, I'd work with Jeff. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Is there a band out there that you would like to take a crack at producing?
In Portland?
Anywhere,
or just actually. In general?
In general, yeah. Well, both.
Uh, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of bands I would love to work with.
What's your most favorite idea on the top off your head that you would love to do the most?
I don't know. I think the Melvins would be a really fun band to work with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think that would be. I mean, I've worked with Buzz before. I did a record with him, and that was awesome. You know, he was super rad, funny as fuck. But I've never worked with Dale. I would love to work with Dale. He's a rad fucking drummer. It would be really fun to work with him.
Yes, were you at that show? I know Jeremy and I were at the one when they played Fireside for like 3.5 hours and it was like 96 degrees out. And
Yeah.
so
Was
like
that the same? Was that the same?
Oh, go ahead.
Was that the same tour where they played? Then they play like Empty Bottle, Double Door, and Fireside. Was it that
Yeah.
same one?
Yeah, it was so hot and everybody
Yeah.
was like ashy looking because like there was no more
Yeah.
tissue in the Fireside bathroom. You don't really want to wipe your face with the tissue in there. So like everybody was wiping their face with the flyers. So they were just like, I was covered in ink. Right? I was just covered in Fireside flyers, but
It actually sounds
Yeah, somehow somehow at that show, that Fireside show, me and my wife at the time, we got right up front. Like we were like right up front of the stage, like right in front of Buzz. And people were just going fucking nuts. And there was this guy behind us that was fucking insane. He like had his shirt off. He was just like, you know, fucking ripped. And anytime somebody would come near him or us, he would just fucking start going off on them. So he created like this weird like barricade between yeah, between us. And so we were just like, I mean, we probably had like, you know, 3 feet of space all the way around us because of this fucking guy. And it was actually great. Like we were like right up front, like nobody was like bumping into us. It was pretty awesome.
You had your own bodyguard that was kind of like just
Yeah.
it was like a Melvin Bruce Springsteen show. It was so long. It just never ended, man. But yeah,
that
cool.
was a great fucking show.
Yeah, they're always cool, man. I miss seeing them at small venues and Jesus Lizard too. I really wish they would start doing something. You know, it'd be cool if like
yeah,
you know, some of those venues hopefully remain open. But you know, after Double Door went, it was kind of like
let's see.
You know, we'll
I
have
mean,
to.
I think things will open up again.
Right.
They'll open. They're gonna have to be reinvented.
I was gonna ask that too. Like,
but I do think things are gonna get back. I do.
Mm-hmm. How has the pandemic affected Chicago? Have there been venues that have closed there, Sanford?
Yes, shut down. Shut down. I think there's.
I don't think any. I don't know if any of the have permanently closed because of the pandemic.
Oh, they did.
No, I mean they're trying to keep it open. There's a lot of
donations and
stuff.
People
people doing things to help out
to try to keep it open so they don't like lose their mortgage and stuff like that.
We'll see. Hey, maybe the kids will start doing $5 shows in basements again. They can reinvent itself.
That might be.
Dude, I totally see that happening, and I was hearing stories about that during the pandemic of people doing house shows and shit. I mean, I definitely wasn't gonna chance it, but yeah, I could definitely see that coming back for real.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Well, we all have to start somewhere, you know. If they're starting to do shows in these open venues, and then the city comes and they see that you're gathering, you're going to get ticketed and you're probably going to lose your liquor license. And
I don't think it's going to go on for that much longer. I really don't. Europe's already doing. I know you got tickets ready for Decibel Fest, right, Markisan?
Yeah, I have tickets and a hotel.
Yeah,
just haven't booked
that's September, end of September.
Yeah, it's looking pretty good though, because I mean I had the first vaccine shot, so
yeah,
we haven't.
And everybody's supposed to get it before May.
Yeah,
or be available.
We were supposed to go to Psycho last year.
Yeah, that wasn't. I didn't want to be in a.
Oh, it was canceled.
Yeah,
we couldn't go. But that was like our anniversary honeymoon thing.
I just wanted to see Danzig.
Oh,
There
oh
was more
right.
than that there.
Oh, the cycle thing.
Yeah,
There was more than that there.
yeah, but Danzig would be it's not if they only play 1 through 4, it's good. From Sam Hain.
They would
Yeah.
want us. They would want to see.
That'd be good.
But Markisan's actually drinking out of a beer horn that is part of his comic book
yeah.
package.
Oh,
Mead horn.
oh yeah.
Yeah. I write comic books, so we did a mead horn for my newest comic book.
Oh fuck yeah, that's awesome.
It's made out of a real water buffalo horn, so
Nice.
it's pretty cool.
Did you
Even have our own mead. Do you know
Hey.
brimming horn? I don't know if you drink or not, but brimming horn meter is awesome.
Yeah, no, I've never had it. I'd definitely be down to try it.
Yeah, they go to the Decibel Festival too. Have you ever been to the Decibel Fest, Sanford?
I went to there was one in LA a couple years ago, where Triptychon played like a Celtic Frost set.
Guys,
God
Saw
plays
that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was great.
That's
It's
awesome.
fucking awesome.
So
Someone did double duty with Hellhammer. Or,
so for a production, I was wondering how you think it's changed since you started in the beginning. How has it evolved? What are the biggest differences you think overall, and then just the way you handle production since those early days?
Well, the biggest difference is everybody's a producer now.
Right.
All you need is a laptop and a
right?
bedroom, and you've got a recording studio. So that's always kind of weird, because you really have to, like, if you're a band, you've got to weed through all the fucking bullshit, because I watched some of these guys on YouTube and it's just complete fucking nonsense. They're like doing these tutorials and they have no idea what the fuck they're talking about.
Right?
You've got to be able to fucking figure out who's full of shit and who's not, so that's kind of a huge thing, like that's because when I was coming up, there wasn't many people doing it, and my scene anyway, there wasn't a lot of us, and I think that's kind of like what helped me out, like, kind of poke through, was I was like the one guy in the area that actually listened to that style of music and understood it and got it, and now everybody's got a studio and now everybody's making records, and
Right.
that doesn't necessarily mean that they know what they're doing. And I'm not saying that there's a lot of good guys out there, but I guess the thing that irritates me the most is just like these YouTube guys, and sometimes I just go on there just to like watch some of their channels just to get a laugh, because
they pretend like they're experts.
But the scary thing is there's like 20,000-30,000 followers these people have, and I'm just like, man, this just sucks, because they're just like giving all these kids fucking horrible advice, and it just sucks, because they're then gonna go give it to this guy. So you just end up with a bunch of like shitty sounding records, you know what I mean? Or people just don't know, because that's making a record, like hitting record is like such a small percentage of what it takes to make a good record and be able to like deal with a band,
Right.
So it's like, I don't know, that to me, that's like, I mean, on the flip side though, I think it's great that there's all this new technology accessible to musicians. I think it's awesome that musicians don't have to go to a studio to demo their songs. They can demo the songs in their bedroom, and then they can take that and then go to a studio and they're like super prepared and they've got all their shit together. That's fucking great, because, for a long time, demoing was super hard and all you had was like a 4-track or, whatever you had, and you're super limited. Now you've got you know, you basically have a studio in a box that you can demo all your shit. You've got programs that literally play drum beats for you. You don't even need to like program them. I think all that's great, you know, for like a musician, it's awesome. But you know, you just gotta like keep in mind that there's a lot more to it than just having a computer and having a microphone, you know.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. It takes away from the art of it. It seems to. Anyway, I'm not a musician. But
Yeah, I think I miss having a Porta studio and a 4-track and going to Radio Shack and buying splitter after splitter and shitty mic after shitty mic, and just like we'd have like a mic tree like on top of the drum set. You know, we're like 13 years old and trying to get, you know, like something to sound like whatever, and then you keep bouncing tracks back and forth, and you know, so now like since you're mixing all these albums, like do you want just a dry signal? Like if a band has a DAW or
no, not at all. And that's a problem that I'm running into with a lot of these guys that record stuff themselves. And that's all part of what I'm going back to is like they don't ever commit anything. You know what I mean? And there is something to be said about a Porta studio because you have to commit. And I think that's something that's missing in digital technology is like nobody wants to commit now. They want to always leave it open so they can always change it at any time. So then technically it's never done. You know what I mean? Like at some point you have to say, this is the sound, let's go. You know what I mean? And they don't want to do that. So they send me these tracks with like nothing on them. And they're like, okay, this is what we wanted to sound like. I'm like, why didn't you make it sound like that? You know, when you were tracking the shit, why didn't you just do it then? Now you're trying to explain to me what you're hearing when you could have just done it right then.
I think that part of the artistic value of it is they're, you know, being able to lay something down, but they expect you or another engineer or producer to take what they want to sound like and then you mix it to make it that way. But how are they going to go on tour like that?
I mean, you know, like I don't like that. That's always an argument too that I run across is, you know, if I suggest something or if something comes up, an idea comes up and somebody's like, well, you know, how are we going to play that live? And I always tell them that don't worry about that shit. Like get the record to sound exactly how you want it to sound. Like put all the shit on there that you want and then figure out how to play it live. Don't limit yourself in the studio because of your limitations of what you have right then and there. You know, you can always make the album how you want it to sound, add all the stuff that you want, and then you can get gear and figure out ways to recreate that live. You can, there's always ways to do that. You know what I mean? There's so much technology and so many options out there. There's always ways to do it, but don't not do something because you don't know how to play it live at that moment. You know, that just doesn't make any sense. And two, it's like some of these people that are your fans, all they have is your record. They may never see you play live. You know what I mean? So why not have the best representation of your sound on record? And then, you know, if they end up seeing you, it's not like they're going to be at your show and they're like all fucking bummed because that one guitar fucking overdub they're not playing it live. You know what I mean? Like nobody gives a shit about that. Nobody fucking cares.
That's true. I mean, Godflesh has been doing it for 30 years, you know. Are you doing 2-inch tape or are you still mixing on tape, or like for a band coming in and they have everything demoed out? Like is the cost difference so great? Go from all digital to, you know, mixed onto tape, right? Like what does that look like for a band if they want to have that sound? Or does it really make a difference?
To me, it doesn't even make a difference. I mean, it doesn't matter anymore. You know, it's just a medium. It's like, you know, am I gonna drink Coke or am I gonna drink Pepsi? You know, it's the same thing. It's just a different way of going about it. And it's all like what you know. If you are really fast and efficient on tape, then record a tape. If you're really efficient in a computer, record to a computer. You know what I mean? It doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's like whatever is going to benefit you the most. I quit tracking the tape a long time ago because, it's just not in the budget. Like you figure out like just a tape or reel now is like, I don't know, $250. I don't even know. I haven't even looked in so long. And it's just like extra steps involved. You've got to rewind the tape. You've got to fast forward the tape. You've got to find, markers. If you want to edit the tape, that's going to take a bit. So all those little things throughout the day ends up being like hours worth of time, and bands are so strapped for like budget nowadays, like every little minute, like literally counts, So if anybody approaches me about recording a tape, I always talk them out of it because, once you break it down, you start doing the math. I'm like, you're going to end up essentially having an extra day or two of recording if you go digital versus tape, and what are you going to benefit really from tape, to tell your friends you tracked a tape. That's it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I've probably romanticized that. Just I've recorded in like Chucky Cheetah's studio back in the day with he did like the Peg Boy, Naked Ray Gun stuff, and yeah, it was always cool to say you would track to tape, but I'm not good enough to really know the difference, if there really is a benefit at this point, because it's definitely more expensive.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only benefit I could see is just going back to just committing to a sound, which I always do when I track digital anyway. I always have a pedal, and I'm like, oh, you want delay on this guitar part? Well, let's put a pedal on it and we're going to record it with a fucking delay on it. We're not going to add it later. We're going to do it right now. And so I always kind of track digital, how, I bounce stuff down, like if I've got 4 mics on a guitar, I'll bust those down to like 1 or 2 tracks, just because I don't want to have to deal with 6 tracks when I'm mixing. I know the sound I want. I know the sound I'm going for. So I'm just going to print it to 1 or 2 tracks now. And so when it comes time to mix, I literally have 1 or 2 guitar tracks to deal with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I definitely I still, even though I'm recording digitally, I still treat it as if I would be tracking to tape.
Got it.
That's interesting. I guess I've never really looked at how that goes.
Well, I don't know.
Between releasing an album and the sounds that it would be going on live or going on tour.
Mhm.
I never.
Well, that's Sanford's a pro. That's why he considers it.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, I just figured if you could put it on an album, that you go on tour and play it just the same.
Yeah, there's some bands.
Yeah,
I think recording live is.
You also think about Yeah, totally, and it depends on the band, obviously. But the thing is like you go see a band play the Empty Bottle, for example, and there's people everywhere. The PA's just fucking cranked. Everything's distorted. It's fucking loud. You're wasted. Are you really gonna like sit here and nitpick over what sounds are that they didn't play live?
That's why I give.
So yeah, I mean, I
give a lot to Dark Throne and Transylvanian Hunger, in that way they want it to be nasty and raw, and I like that. They could just be raw and.
Well, there's definitely some bands that are going to be overproduced for what they do.
To do that,
or you'd probably encourage them not to be as, clean. I mean, have there been situations where people really wanted to kind of overproduce an album that sounded better when it just dirty? Like,
oh yeah, raw. Absolutely.
Like, let's get you some shittier microphones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, I definitely, yeah. I mean, I always like throwing up like shitty options. You know what I mean? Like, you never know. Like maybe the bridge on this one song, like the one shitty drum mic that you have just thrown in a case in the corner sounds really fucking cool for that one part. You know what I mean? So it's always nice to like capture little random shit like that. I mean, like I did a record recently where the studio had this, it was a microphone that was built inside of a soup can or something. And it was totally shitty. It sounded like dog shit, but I'm like, this could be really cool, for like, I don't know, there could be a use for it at some point. So you never know. I mean, I love doing shit like that for sure.
I have an appreciation for raw, nasty, dirty, gurgly sounds.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all do.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, Markisan, I know you had a couple more questions at least. I think you had quite a few.
I mean, we've covered a lot of them. Well, I have one question, so I have a couple questions, but
okay.
So my friend George, who founded the Metalheads podcast that I'm on, he's always talking about he hates production on this record or that record, and everybody on the cast is convinced that his ears are completely shot. We have to tell him he's crazy because the production sounds so good. So my question for you, Sanford, is there a way that you can tell if the production on a record is of high quality?
Good question.
The way I view production as either you like it or you don't like it. And what I think sounds good, you may think sounds like shit, and vice. I mean, some of my favorite records, like if you were to break it down from like a technical standpoint, sound like dog shit. But if that record sounded any different, it wouldn't have the same impact. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't have the same fucking vibe to it. So to me, it's always like whatever, I work for the band, and I know, there's been numerous times that I've seen reviews or whatever, and people talking shit about my production, but it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, the band liked it, and that's all that matters. I don't give a fuck what some dude in some magazine thinks about it. I could care less. Right. As long as the band's happy, and that's all that's important, and everything else doesn't matter. If the band's cool with it, then it's fucking good.
Then you did your job, so it's all good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I work for the band. I work for nobody else. I don't work for the label. I don't work for the management. I work for the band. So
yeah,
my job is to make them happy, and if they're happy, cool. If they're not happy, then that's a totally different story.
Right. Well, they wouldn't release it if they weren't.
Maybe they would.
Yeah.
Maybe,
well,
yeah.
Hopefully not.
They ran out of money. They gotta.
Are you drinking out of a mason jar?
Yeah.
What are you drinking?
What's that?
I'm always drinking out of mason jars.
Oh yeah. I do a lot of drinking out of mason jars.
Is it a Southern thing?
Yeah, it could be.
It
could be.
Most of my family's from the South, and we just drink out of mason jars.
I upgraded.
It feels better.
Well, my girlfriend is from New York, and she drinks out of mason jars, so I don't know about.
Oh, it's not just
maybe
me. I'm
it's
not
this
really who like breaks glasses, and then I just drink out of mason jars.
Those could be separate issues. Different things. Well, does anybody else have any other questions before we?
Yeah, I mean, my last question was, what are you working on now, producing wise, and what are you excited for people to hear that's going to come out this year in 2021?
Honestly, the thing I'm most excited about right now is this movie. I'm really stoked on it. That's kind of like what I'm doing right now. Like there's a couple records that I'm working on. But that's the thing that's like, that is taking up most of my time right now is the movie. And it's been super fun. I'm really stoked on it. But musically, the record that is coming, I don't know when it's coming out. It might come out this year. I'm not really sure. But it's a Chicago band called Anatomy of Habit. And we actually did 2 records over the pandemic. And I'm very excited about both of them. I don't know how they're going to get released, if it's going to be at the same time or if they're going to stagger them. We actually recorded 3 records, but we mixed 2 of them.
Wow.
Yeah.
What kind of music is it, Sanford?
It's they have a couple records out already. Their last one came out on Relapse. It's kind of Swan. It's like a weird mix of like Swans meets Joy Division. Like it's brutally heavy but it's not metal. You know what I mean? It's like they're one of the heaviest bands. They're one of the heaviest bands that I know of, and they're not a metal band. So it's just like it's just
I like
crushing
that
fucking
it's
heaviness.
lower and the deeper, the more heavy and metal it is.
Yeah, did you get to see the new
Yeah.
Dead Swans documentary on Amazon?
I haven't yet. It's in my
Fucking
queue,
great.
but I haven't had a chance to
So
watch it.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
it's good,
excited
man.
to see it.
Right. So I really want to know more about this horror movie. So once you get to, that point when it's released, can we have you back on? And then we can talk about
Yeah, totally. Once,
the movie.
yeah, I mean, when they give me the thumbs up to like, start talking about it, I'll definitely send you whatever, if there's like a trailer or something like that, I'll send it your way.
Yeah, and I'd love to have you back again so that we could do, whatever albums are about to be released.
Yeah, totally.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, and expect every once in a while I'm going to send you some random bullshit that I recorded. I
Do it,
like
man.
Mike Hill from Tombs all the time. Just like,
he deserves it.
yeah.
Yeah, man. Yeah, send it. I'd love to hear it.
Cool, man. Now I went on your website real quick, and it's just like you hit the button, it says music, and it gives a lot of the music and what you produce. Like, it didn't have everything, it seemed like. Is there a better place for people to go, or if they wanted to get in touch with you to get on the list, the waiting list?
So that website has been a fucking, my website has been the biggest pain in my ass that I've ever had. I've had so many people, dude. I'd like need somebody to. I've like hired, I've traded, I've tried to get people to do the website, and they fuck it up every fucking time. So I just gave up. But I'm actually in the process of trying to, like, for the 15th time to get somebody to do another one. But yeah, that thing's a joke. I haven't even like looked at it in probably 15 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's
we probably both had hair when that was going on.
Yeah,
because you had a nice mane in your
mane.
I did. Yeah.
What is he have? Fucking.
I don't know.
You got a mane.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, that was like, it's like nothing now.
Yeah.
So where can people find you on the socials? Did you do that, Sanford?
The socials.
Yeah, I mean, I've got Instagram, I've got Facebook, even though I've been like Instagram's the best. I check Instagram every day. Facebook, I check like once a month at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's probably the best way to find me on right now until I get this website. It's the Sanford. Yeah.
The Sanford.
Easy.
Oh, that's
Well, cool, man. I really appreciate it. Like I tell everybody after this is all done, we're not too far from Chicago. We're actually 3 blocks from the metro that goes right in. So once you start playing shows and whatnot, and all my friends are out there too, I'll buy you a beer, and hopefully I get to meet you in person. And Markisan, you got anything else?
I'm good, man. It was a real treat to talk to you, Sanford, and just pick your brain about production and music and everything. It's nice to be on this cast. Thanks for inviting me, guys. I appreciate that.
We love you, Markisan.
You're always welcome here.
Jeremy,
enjoy Hawaii.
Oh, I always do. It's the best place.
Oh no.
Actually, my friend had the studio in Hawaii, and I've been trying to talk bands into like flying out and doing a record out there.
Please. There's no metal here. That's the worst part, Sanford. There's no metal.
Well, no, I mean, it would have to be a band. Yeah, it would have to be a band from the States. Probably a band from LA that we could just fly over and record and fly. But the studio is killer. It's like right on the beach.
I mean, everything's beautiful here. Like you said, the only drawback is there's no metal here. There's maybe a couple local metal bands, but bands hardly tour here. And the one place that had metal, that played like a bar, shut down in the pandemic. So I don't know what's going to happen once everything reopens. But
well, you might be that late.
One of the conditions I had of moving out here is I told my wife I have to fly back for metal shows and festivals. So when that starts back up, I'll do it.
Flying to LA is not bad, right?
Right. No, it's
It's-
like 4 or 5 hours, I think. It's not that
Yeah.
bad.
To LA?
Yeah.
From Hawaii?
Yeah.
No, it's really not that bad. It's gonna be that extreme.
Yeah, I don't know. But anyway, Sanford, thank you. You got any other questions? You good?
No, I probably will as soon as we get off. I'll be like, oh
Yeah.
my god, this. Yeah.
No,
there we go.
it's been a real pleasure, man. I have nothing but respect for you in what you do. So any time we can help promote anything, including Markisan, I'm sure he'll tell you the same thing about his podcast. Just reach out, and
Yeah, everybody's
Love to
big
help.
fans of the podcast.
Cool. I will for
Have
sure.
a good one.
I'll definitely be in touch. Yeah,
Bye,
man.
guys.
You too.
all love.
Peace.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us here at the Dead Letter Omissions podcast. We hope you had a good time, and thank you, Sanford and Markisan, for joining us tonight. Everybody, have a good one.
I'm done.